everyone. Welcome to this edition of Think Suburbia, the podcast of the Suburban Virginia Republican Coalition. We thank you for tuning in. I'm Jill Cook, one of the co-founders of SUVGOP and co-host of the podcast. And with me is Mary Campbell, another of the co-founders of SUVGOP and the co-host of this podcast. Our guest today is Tim Cox, running for the House of Delegates. Mary, would you like to welcome Tim?
Thank you, Jill. Tim, we are delighted to have you with us today. We know that you are running in the House of Delegates in the 51st District. Mm-hmm. I have to tell you, I did review your bio and noted that you are a veteran and you have continued serving our country by being in the reserves as a commanding officer. So we would certainly like to thank you for your service. I was also very impressed with noting that you have 3 master's degrees, one in global economics and international business, which really makes you perfectly suited for the position that you are running in the General Assembly. So could you begin by telling us a little bit about the district for the 51st District?
Yes, and thank you so much, Mary, Jill, team. It's an honor to be on this podcast. Thank you very much for having me. As they said, my name is Tim Cox, and I'm running for the House of Delegates in District 51. It is encompassed entirely by Prince William County. And as Mary was saying, I have a Bachelor of Arts degree in global economics and international business. And then I do have 3 master's degrees as well, one of those being the Master of International Public Policy from Johns Hopkins SAIS up the road in DC. I grew up overseas in Brazil. My parents worked down there. My dad is a professor at a seminary. My mom is the school nurse. So education and healthcare were a big part of my upbringing. And I love how they decided to go help people overseas. When I came stateside at age 19, I transferred a year of university that I had done abroad to the United States. And I completed my degree in global econ international business. I joined the Navy because I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to see more of the world. And again, I just saw the importance of a US forward presence overseas and the position of leadership that we hold around the globe and the reliance that nations have on the United States to be a strong and upright leader, both overseas and domestically. And then after I'd served a number of years in the Navy, I came back stateside. I served for a couple of years in Virginia. So I first got my feet wet in Dahlgren, Virginia, doing Aegis training. And then I went down to Norfolk and I was there a year and a half. And then I separated honorably from active duty and I started pursuing some master's degrees. I got a Master of Divinity. I was first looking at the chaplaincy, but the operational unrestricted side of the military kept reaching out to me and saying, look, come participate in this exercise, or we'd like you to do this. At first, I had the ability to say, no, thank you. I'm in the reserves. I'm pursuing something else. But they were persistent. And I eventually said, yes, I'll go. So I led an exercise down in Southcom in Brazil at the U.S. Consulate General in Rio, multinational exercise with multiple partners. It was there that I met my wife and her family. I had to pursue her then in London and pray imprecatory prayers that she would break up with her then doctor boyfriend. But God was faithful and she chose me. And here we are 5 years later, and we have a wonderful family. And so that's a little bit about me, and thank you again.
Wow, that is, yeah, you have quite an interesting background. And as you mentioned, living overseas from the ages of 3 to 19, I believe, that has given you quite a unique perspective on how the U.S. is seen by the rest of the world, which is kind of a big topic these days. And I wonder how this experience has prepared you to run in the state as a state level. Is that, what can you take from that?
Yeah, I've long wanted to serve my local community in public office. And at first I was looking at different possibilities, and Rich Anderson, who was the previous GOP incumbent, encouraged me to run specifically for the 51st. And so I would say a desire to serve my local community as a public servant, coupled with Rich Anderson and other people in this area, elders at my church and local leaders who said, Tim, we would really like you to look at serving our local community in the 51st district. That was what really was the linchpin and caused me to want to do that. And it has been a wonderful experience, door knocking thousands of doors, meeting the remarkable people that we have in this district, whether military or federal employees or contractors or civilians in any number of professions. I love this area. It is a diverse area. The weather is wonderful. So yes, that's a convoluted answer to your question. Yes.
Tim, I noted on your website that you have a policy button for integrity. Could you tell us why that's so important to you and how you see that fitting into this House of Delegates seat?
Thank you. Yes, integrity is foundational to any person that would seek to serve in public office. We need to be honest and we need to be people of moral uprightness. We are held accountable by our constituents. No person is perfect, but we need to be honest with the people we seek to represent. So that's number one when it comes to integrity. A second point with that has to do with election integrity. A democracy cannot survive without a secure democratic voting system. And we have a system now where unsolicited ballots are sent to wrong address or even deceased voters. We have ballots that are just multiplying and we don't have accountability for them. Our current state also removed the two-person integrity rule where you need two witnesses to sign along with the person. We had an issue with one of the Democratic nominees for governor who did not sign his declaration of candidacy. This is a basic paperwork 101 omission. And what about the witnesses who signed saying, oh yeah, we saw him sign? Clearly they didn't. AP News is covering it is indeed missing. It does not have his signature. So if we can't be faithful and people of integrity in the little details, how on earth can they expect us to be faithful and represent well in bigger things? So that we need to get back to election integrity. We need a secure voting system where people are engaged in their civic duty. They're requesting ballots. They sign in the presence of witnesses or a notary, and they take it back and they can track where their ballot is going, check green marks at each step to make sure that it is going to the end result and the end vote that they actually put on their ballot.
Right. I agree. Yeah. And this kind of leads me to the next question, sort of the topics of honesty and faithfulness and morality. You've described faith, family, and freedom as, quote, bedrocks of society. Can you give specific examples of how these principles will guide you in areas that you will be responsible for as a public servant? Education, business, healthcare, things that you will be making decisions on for your constituents. How do those principles guide you there?
Yes, faith, family, freedom is directly related to the First Amendment. And there's a reason that the First Amendment is first. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, of the press, of peaceable assembly. These are cornerstones of our Constitution and nation. And so if we do not have freedom of faith, of religion, and I'm talking freedom for people to express themselves in any religion, we're a pluralistic society, then we will not have freedom to run our families and to have families that we want to have, because so many families do have faith. And you're also free from faith. If you do not have a specific religion, that's okay too. So that needs to be clearly enunciated, that freedom of religion is a First Amendment principle that leads to having freedom in our families. And yes, freedom of speech and freedom of the press are also key components of freedom. That's why I just put that word freedom there, because it's a notion that is slowly being lost, because now we have an idea that we are the end authorities on freedom. And we saw this recently with President Biden, where he said, it's unconstitutional for me to extend the eviction moratorium, but I'm going to do it anyways. So essentially, he has departed now from the Constitution, and he is the end authority on that decision. And that is not how our nation is run. We have a constitutional basis to our faith, to our families, and to our freedom. And that is key. And when I say a constitutional basis, I'm talking about the first, second, third, et cetera, all the amendments. And that's an oath that I took to support and defend the entire Constitution. How this will translate then to specific areas in the district: education, business, healthcare. These are all key matters that people care about. I like to talk about education because, again, freedom, parents need to have freedom and choices when it comes to where they send their kids, what their kids are being taught, how they are being taught. We have certain leaders in Richmond who want to stovepipe and limit the options that parents have and indoctrinate our children in schools. They want to teach critical race theory or the 1619 Project, or they want to experiment with gender confusion. All these things, and parents don't have a choice. It's an either or situation where, oh, you send your kid to this public school and this is what they're going to learn, period. And so parents are losing their ability to dialogue, to engage with these school boards that are becoming autocratic. We need to put a stop to that. We need to serve parents and serve our children well. No child left behind. So I want to further the freedom and the options that parents have. If they want to homeschool their kids, wonderful. If they want to send their kids to private schools, God bless them. If they want to send them to an international school where they learn multiple language, okay, do that. Or if they want to send them to a public school, do so as well. But they need to have the ability to talk with those public schools and the school boards to make sure their kids aren't being indoctrinated. When it comes to business, I love the framework of freedom that this country has with property rights. We need to lower taxes. When government begins to prey upon its people and raise taxes year after year, that is not a formula for success. Constituents and people begin to resent the government instead of relying on them to maintain the framework of freedom that has led to the most flourishing society of all time. The reason our country is also the most generous of all time is because we have private individuals and corporations who can decide what to do with their income. And if we have government trying to raise corporate taxes and individual income taxes, they do not have as much discretion with their income, and we tend to become more micromanaging and controlling of our income and not as generous. And so it's not a formula for success. We need employees and employers to have the ability to engage in mutually beneficial transactions. That is the basis, that is the hallmark of free market enterprise. And yes, there is crony capitalism. There are greedy entrepreneurs. There are greedy businessmen. There are greedy people in any vocation. That is a red herring, however. If you just try to say, oh, well, because this person's bad, it debunks the whole system, we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, we need to maintain the foundation of freedom that has led to our free market economy. And finally, with healthcare, we need transparency between the insurer, provider, and patient. It used to be in this country that the doctor-patient relationship was so healthy, was so transparent. Patients had the ability to look at various doctors in their local community, and they could pick a doctor that they wanted to work with long-term. And the doctor and that patient formed a long-term relationship. Increasingly now, that relationship is going away because it's being brokered through insurance companies and medical providers. And there's a lack of transparency for the costs of medical services. And I'll use an example from our own experience. We did the military thing where all of our medical concerns were taken care of, thankfully. Our purpose was to serve our country and to be lethal in our defense and in our offense. So thankfully, our government and our nation have decided that for our national security. Then when we transitioned to the civilian side, we went to a local hospital and we had the set copay with the insurance provider. And then several weeks later, we get another bill from the medical provider, hundreds of dollars more. And we said, no, we already discussed this with the insurance provider and with you, the medical provider. You're an in-network provider. The doctor was in-network as well. We pay the copay, good to go. So we fought this for 6 months until finally the insurance provider was able to prevail upon the medical provider and say, look, he paid his copay. That's it. You can't charge them these other fees. So we need more transparency there. Just like we have with consumer transactions in our free market economy, where if you pay for a good or service, you have the set price up front. And if there's hidden fees or anything, you have the ability to say, hey, put all the fees on the table. We need that ability as well with our healthcare.
Tim, that is a very impressive agenda on your platform, and it leads perfectly into our next question on public safety. all around the United States, and especially here in Northern Virginia, we are seeing issues arising daily dealing with public safety. Can you tell us what you see as the challenges in this area and how you might have a vision for how some of these can be corrected or improved on?
Yes, thank you. Public safety is another top priority. It's reflected on my website. And I see it related first and foremost to backing our men and women in blue and being grateful for law enforcement. We have an attack on police officers in this state and in this country that is unwarranted and unnecessary, and it is going to do irreparable damage. Murders are on the rise here in Lake Ridge, where I live. In my district and in my county, murders are on the rise. We had one of our conservative supervisors try to add 4 police officers to the rosters, and it was shot down by the liberal majority, just 4. And we're talking with millions of excess COVID-19 federal emergency funds that have come to this county and district, and they would not add 4 police officers to walk the streets and keep us safe. That's unsatisfactory, as we say, unsat in the military. We need to be grateful for our men and women in blue. I also see another aspect of public safety is safety and transportation. I would love common sense solutions on highways. I'd love to see extra lanes added so that we don't have bottlenecks. I would love to have smart traffic lights so that we don't have people waiting for 2-3 minutes on a main thoroughfare, and you have a little trickle from the side where they get in, and then the main thoroughfare is backed up for half a mile because it was red for 2-3 minutes. So I would love common sense solutions. I don't want quotas in tickets. But where in the world, only in third world countries are police officers required to meet a certain quota with tickets, with parking violations or traffic tickets. Wait, no, they are supposed to enforce the law as they come across violations. They're not supposed to meet a certain quota. That completely removes the spirit and the letter of the law, which is simply to enforce the speed limit or the parking violation. And that leads to another point. We can't have predatory towing. There are instances where people are just trying to find a space, which is so difficult here in Northern Virginia, and leave their car for a little bit, and you have a tower that'll just come, lift their vehicle away, and charge exorbitant fees. These are all things we need to look at. So I see these as elements of safety because road rage is a thing, and it can just lead to poor decisions, which can escalate. So I also link that to public safety. And of course, that's linked to our law enforcement, who it's incumbent upon them to enforce a lot of these things on our roads. And I link to safety. I love the idea that we want to be stewards of our environment. We see our waterways and our open expanses in our fields, and we guard them with great pride. And we have one part of the aisle that is trying now to canvass our district and state with solar panels, with pieces of metal and glass. And that is not going to help this state or this Commonwealth. It is going to lead to a lack of strong energy and a lack of reliable energy for exorbitant costs. And that is something that I also put, we need to steward the environment as a responsibility and approach that we have as citizens.
Tim, we couldn't agree with you more. I love the traffic light idea, because that is very frustrating. But you know that SUVGOP has been working on the repeal VCEA Act to repeal the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which is basically what you just described about the solar panels. And we're so thrilled that you as a candidate are on board with that. It is incredibly important that people are educated at the cost, the expense, and the problems with these seemingly innocuous solutions. So thank you for bringing that up. So we're almost at the end of our time here. We always ask our guest, aside from politics, is there any, first of all, if we didn't cover anything that you want to cover, certainly mention that. And second, anything you do besides politics for fun?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, a lot of my spare time now is seeking to represent this district. But we've tried to make it as fun as possible. My wife is very gracious. She is a medical doctor in Brazil, and in the UK. She's a remarkable woman. We would love for her to be able to translate that medical education and background to the United States, but that's a long process because our medical standards are so high. So that's actually an area, if elected to public office, I would love to look at the possibility of streamlining the accreditation of highly qualified doctors and dentists from overseas without sacrificing our very high medical and dental standards. I think there's a way to do that. And we do have a shortage of medical professionals. So that's something I'm interested in pursuing. I love my kids so much. I have a son, Joseph, have a daughter, Anna Marie. They are just joys of our lives, and they gravitate towards us. We love raising them and taking them out to the Prince William County Fair and just on walks almost every other day. We're out in a walk. She's still in her stroller. He's running about with his little Tonka truck. So they are little blessings. We love them so much. We actually lost a child at 37 weeks, and he's buried in Quantico National Cemetery. His name is Maximus. And so a piece of us is forever here in Northern Virginia. And that's another reason why I'm so big on protecting the unborn. It is a distinct life. And earlier I was talking about how we have this idea that we are the end authorities for our lives. We don't turn to the Constitution. Some of us don't turn to a higher deity or God or faith. We believe that we are the end authorities. And so that expression, my body, my choice, is so wrong and detrimental, because a baby is a separate body. It's a separate life. We have seen that, we have experienced that. And aren't we all grateful that we were at the mercy of our mothers and they kept us? We are separate from our mothers. I'm so grateful for the women in my life, my wife, my mothers, my grandmothers. I am so thankful for the men in my life, my grandfathers, my dad, just incredible role models. And so that is another solid foundation I have that I can go back to if I'm a little down or discouraged. I can reference my family, and I want other people to have that. I want other people to have that freedom to reference their strong families and to strengthen their families in their faith or outside of their faith. But we need to have the ability to have strong families in our society. So those are a few answers. Did you already want me to reference some of the contact information?
Yes, Tim, as we wrap up today, I know after your constituents listen to this podcast that they are going to be eager to be involved in your campaign. So would you share with us how people can volunteer, how can they donate, and what is your website?
Yes, my website is timcox4virginia.com, all written out, timcox4virginia.com. And there is a join button in the upper right-hand corner, right next to a donate button. Those are two areas that people can get involved. They can join our team, they can volunteer on Super Saturdays, they can go door knocking during the week if they want to. We can cut walk books for people to walk right in their local neighborhood. I have signs, as you see right behind me. I have signs that I can take to people, or we can have taken to people, and people can put them in their yards or in a strategic location. We always do need volunteers, and we do need funds. A campaign is expensive. So check out my website, timcox4virginia.com. Donate, participate. Also on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, MeWe, LinkedIn. We are on all of them. So you can find me, Tim Cox for Virginia, there as well.
Tim, thank you so much for being with us today. You are such a well-prepared candidate, and we wish you the very best as we follow the next couple of months with you.
Yes,
Jill?
Thank you, Tim. That was really a very comprehensive look at your ideas, your background, and how you will use them. And we're very impressed, and we wish you the best of luck. So that wraps up this edition of Think Suburbia. For all of our listeners and viewers out there, thank you so much for joining us today. You can find all the podcasts that we've done with candidates and on issues on our podcast page on our website, SUVGOP.com. You just go to the drop-down menu and click on podcast, and you'll find everything that we've done. So thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you on the next edition of Think Suburbia.